So how exactly does the Stormlight Archive connect to the Mistborn series? Hey, I'm Father Roderick, I'm a priest, I'm a geek, and I'm also a fantasy author currently writing my first fantasy novel. And if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe to this channel. But I'm also a huge fan of fantasy in general. And a couple of years ago, I discovered Brandon Sanderson, and I started reading the book that everybody recommended I read first, and that was Mistborn. And I devoured it. It was so incredibly cool. And I loved, this was the first time as a reader that I encountered something called a magic system. So the whole elemency magic system where the protagonists in the story are able to burn metal, not physically, but like on the inside, and thereby gaining powers and energy and being able to do incredible things. That entire aspect of fantasy had eluded me up until that moment because I grew up with Tolkien, and Tolkien, there's a little bit of magic, but it's not the main, it's not the core of the story. Whereas in a lot of epic fantasy today, magic systems are essential. This is also why for my own book, I'm currently working on a magic system that is unique. And I'm learning a lot from the way in which Brandon Sanderson introduced us to that in the Mistborn series. But of course, Mistborn series, that's already quite a while ago that Brandon Sanderson wrote that. And even though it has seen a resurgence recently thanks to Book Talk, currently the big project that Brandon Sanderson is devoting most of his time to is this Stormlight Archive. And so as someone who has only read the 3 Mistborn books, I haven't even read the subsequent books that take place on the same planet or in the same world. I feel that it is maybe a good idea to share with you, if you are also like me, starting to feel the waters when it comes to Brandon Sanderson's work, to maybe embark on this journey together, because I am planning this year on reading the entire Stormlight Archive. Actually, I've got the first book here loaded up on my Kindle. I am very much a digital reader. It's not because I don't like books, it's just because it's a little bit cheaper. And so, and let's face it, this is also less daunting. This is still like the Kindle is this thin, whereas if you take this book in its physical form, it's like, it tells you you're in for quite a lot of work. So I just pretend that it's not so much work. However, before I start reading The Way of Kings, I'd like to share with you what I've gathered so far about this Stormlight Archive and how it relates especially to Mistborn and to the overall world that Brandon Sanderson, the overall mythology that he is creating. So what is the Stormlight Archive? So it is, just like Mistborn, epic fantasy, which means it's a huge world, lots of different characters, and an intricate magic system. This series of books, I think there are supposed to be 10 books, and right now 5 books have been written. The other 5 are still in the future, so it's going to be insane. I just cannot understand how someone can write so much in relatively short time. So the 5 books that are out now are The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, Rhythm of War, and Wind of Truth. Wind of Truth just very recently came out, and I did another video on the controversy around Wind of Truth. Just look for it here on the channel. Now, just like Mistborn, also this series of stories has complex magic systems, lots of world building, lots of politics and wars and all that, tensions. And in this case, obviously, it's all again about redemption, about sacrifice, about leadership. These are kind of the recurring ingredients for anything that Brandon Sanderson writes. But my question before diving into The Way of Kings is, how does this relate to Mistborn? If this is all supposed to take place in the same world, in the same universe, how is it possible that this is a completely different story? And even the magic system, from what I've read, is completely different from the magic system that you find in the Mistborn series. Again, Mistborn series is a magic system called Allomancy, and it's based on these metals that you can burn to gain powers. Here, in the Stormlight Archive, what's the word again, how it's called? I took some notes here. It is surge binding, and it sounds very cool from, let's say, the what I've been able to gather about this system. So just like Allomancy, surge binding is also a magic system that is basically focused on giving people extra powers. Like it's magic, right? So but it's magic in a very instrumental way. It is meant as a tool to make you reach your goals. So what is this this system focusing on? Well, there are no less than 10 different surges that the people in this story can control. They can't control all of them together, but several of them. It's a little bit like in the Mistborn series. People have usually one type of allomancy that they control, and there are some rare exceptions to that. Some natural talents that are able to have more powers than the usual user of allomancy. So here, these 10 surges are gravitation. So you can manipulate gravity to make yourself or people fly or objects fly. It's like the Force in Star Wars. I love that. Well, at least a little part of the Force, right? But that's already very cool. And it's something that in the Mistborn series was done also by burning metal, and you could like drop a coin on the ground and then use allomancy to kind of push against that metal, and that would make you kind of fly up in the sky. The way in which Brandon Sanderson describes these magical systems is unparalleled. It is so, on the one hand, it's very complex, but it also is very relatable. And when you read it, you almost feel like, well, you know what? I could use that magic. I think I know how to do it. It's just that in this world, we don't have magic like that. The second surge that you can use in this magic system is division, and that is the ability to break down materials at a molecular level, so you can disintegrate objects. I love that idea as well. The third one is abrasion, and you can, by that, reduce friction. So you can, for instance, like glide along surfaces and doing that at incredible speed. So this would be like the equivalent of like sliding on ice in the winter. How cool is that? Then you've got progression, illumination, transformation, transportation, cohesion, tension, and adhesion. I won't go into details also because I don't want to spoil myself. But all these different powers are used in this magic system. And just as in Mistborn, it's not just a simple trick. It's not a parlor trick. It's also not just a tool. What Brandon Sanderson does very well is to connect this magic system with the world and with the characters. So I'm very curious to see how he does that. I think he did it tremendously well in Mistborn. I have no idea how that's going to work out in this particular series. But I have another question. How does the world that we see in this series, how does it relate to the world in Mistborn? Since, why is there no element? Now I forgot the name. Why can't they use metals to do magic, right? Well, again, I'm a novice, and you're probably yelling at your screen right now, like, dude, why should you make a video about this if you don't even know the basics? But hey, if I ask these questions, then probably a lot of other people that would love to dive more into Brandon Sanderson's works have the same questions. I'm just saying them out loud. So this has always kind of like intrigued me. How is it possible that in one series of books you've got one magic system, and in another series of books you've got another magic system? Well, it turns out this takes place, yes, in the same universe, but not in the same world. There are separate planets, and all that together, all these different worlds on which the stories of Brandon Sanderson's stories take place, together form what he calls the Cosmere. And the Cosmere is not just like a galaxy, you could say, with different planets, but it has like a common, you could say, metaphysical dimension. So how is this magic possible? And if these planets, these places are all kind of part of the same galaxy, why can't they use all these different magical powers on all the different planets? Well, that is why Brandon Sanderson has created this kind of cosmology of the Cosmere. And he explains that this has to do with the way that these worlds have been created. And every world, every planet, I'm just calling it planets, every planet has, I think, shards. Correct me if I'm wrong. And these shards are, I think, part of the creation, the kind of the process of creation. So every planet has its own type of shards, and that gives that particular planet a certain magical system and magical abilities. Plus, secondly, the elemency, now I remember, elemency, for instance, is inherited. So it is given from parents to their children, children to the grandchildren. And so that makes it very easy to explain why that only takes place on the planet of the Mistborn series and not on the planet of the Way of Kings and all these other stories. So I'm actually quite happy that it's not too complicated and that it all kind of makes sense. I think it is pretty genius that by creating this kind of enveloping cosmology of the Cosmere, Brandon Sanderson gives himself a lot of creative freedom to do whatever he wants in these books, in these series, and he avoids all these books kind of feeling the same and looking the same. This is one of the big issues, I think, in a lot of epic fantasy, is that especially in these series, if you read more and more books of the same author, it's a repetition of the same stuff, the same tropes, the same creatures. With the Cosmere, Brandon Sanderson is able to build a huge ensemble story. It gives him the ability to create something that kind of feels like what Tolkien does in Silmarillion. So he's able to create a cosmology, a creation history, even in theology, you could say. But at the same time, he gives himself a lot of room to play with different themes and different environments and different magic systems. And personally, I find that incredibly powerful. And I'm almost envious because I'm writing my own first fantasy novel, and I'm a complete novice, as you've been able to tell from this video. But at the same time, this immediately makes me think of my own magic system. And am I not limiting myself too much by just confining it to one space or one planet? Maybe I should come up with some variants in different countries or something. Anyway, if you want to hear more about my story, you can check out the other videos on this channel. I do like a daily vlog of my writing progress, and I'm having a blast because the community on this channel is incredibly helpful, and there are a lot of huge fantasy fans and avid readers that are hopefully also protecting me against making too many newbie mistakes that would disqualify my book immediately. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this little kind of brain dump on what I've gathered so far about the Cosmere, about the Way of Kings and the rest of these books. I'm starting that adventure today. I'm probably going to do a mix of just reading on my Kindle and then also listening to the audiobook. That allows me to read more. That's one of the tricks that I often use to, read a lot of books every year, is because sometimes I'm reading in my reading corner, but if I can't sit in a chair because I need to clean the house and everything or cook, or if I go for a walk or for a run, I can always listen to the audiobook and then pick up on the Kindle where I left the story. And so hopefully I'll make some good progress. What I'm going to do on this channel is to give you regular updates. So I'll do like a reading vlog, giving you my first, impressions and what I've discovered and learned. And hopefully that is useful for people that are reading this along with me. but also to those of you that have already read all these books, and are interested in seeing the experience of someone who has just started to discover these stories. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching. If you like more of this content in your feed, then make sure to subscribe.